Assalamu alaikum. Ciao, ni hao. Dzień dobry. Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you? I hope you're well today. It's Ken at 10. If you haven't been here before, then welcome along and thanks for joining us. We're going to tell you a number of things today. At the end of the show, I've got three things for you. I've got a forgotten password story. A guy has got unbelievable forgotten password story. You know, we've all done it, haven't we? Oh, what's that password? Oh, I've forgotten it. Well, this guy has got the most unbelievable forgotten password story. If you haven't heard about it in the news, I'll tell you that later. Also, two other things I want to talk to you about later. Can you guess how many housing ministers there have been in the UK over the last 10 years? That's an interesting statistic for you. And finally, I've got a quote of the week. We've done a quote of the week already this week, but there's one in particular that is so inspirational. I'm going to share it with you at the end of the show. So that's it. So today's show, we're going to talk about how the deadline affects you if you're trying to sell your property. And have you got enough time? The big question I'm getting asked every day now by people up and down the country is, have I got sufficient time to get my property on the market, to sell it, and then to find a buyer, make sure that the conveyancing goes through, mortgage offer, etc. Well, the truth is we've got less than 12 weeks now. The average transaction time with us was between 8 to 12 weeks prior to the deadline being announced. The problem we have now, particularly and specifically, is that there are 650,000 people. That's right, 650,000 people in the queue right now trying to make that deadline. Now, what this is doing is it's putting huge pressure on all of the channels. So estate agents, believe it or not, are under pressure. Not that you should feel sorry for us, but there's quite a lot of people are struggling to get the resources. So if you speak to an estate agent, you're thinking of going on the market, number one, when could they take it on if you decide to go ahead? Because a lot of the time what you'll find is it's not as quick as you expect. So in order to make it work, the answer to the question is it depends on your circumstances, but time is very, very tight now. And in fact, I suspect it may have passed particularly for flat investments, because with flats, we've got the added complication of the leasehold management inquiries. And these can be a real hold up. So my advice to you, if you're thinking of selling a leasehold flat and you're trying to beat the deadline, then get your ducks in a row right now. You haven't got very long. You've got to find a buyer desperately quickly now to have any chance at all. My suspicion would be you probably won't get there, to be totally honest, but don't fret. Most flat buyers we're finding, they're not really affected because first time buyers buying the flats, they still get the full discount up to the first 350,000. So therefore, there's not a big loss if you don't make that deadline. And flats haven't really been impacted in the way that houses have and the way that prices have increased in houses, because up to 500,000 locally for us, that means houses, there's a maximum discount of £15,000. 15K is a lot of money, isn't it? And is it possible to get there still? Question. And the answer is yes, it is, but you need all your ducks in a row. What do I mean by that? Well, three things. If you've got a house, number one, you must have an estate agent that is right on the ball, right on it. Question, can they get the photographer around straight away if you're going on the market? Question, are they good enough to vet the buyers to make sure they get you the very best buyer and the very best chance of meeting that deadline? Question, can they recommend to you a solicitor that can actually do it? Because solicitors are overwhelmed as well. So, and then on top of that, of course, when you find the buyer, that you're at the mercy of their mortgagees. So it's really important to know what their arrangements are in terms of their mortgage. If they're cash, proving the cash is a massive part of what we do. You know, just last week, somebody said to me, I'm cash, and then changed the story to actually the money's overseas. And then I said, I can count. That's fine. Show me the overseas money. And then the story changed to, well, actually, it's in the UK. Okay, where is it? Well, I've sold a property. It's about to complete. Okay, give me the details of the property, your solicitor's details and your estate agent's. Thing is, it's about to complete. I said, yeah, I heard you, but I need to double check it. Have you exchanged contracts? No. Okay, so what you're telling me is you're under offer and maybe you might exchange contracts. That's quite different from being a buyer with cash, isn't it? You know, so you need an agent that's going to check that for you, make sure they police it properly. Really important that at the very beginning, those things are checked, because if they're not, the likelihood is you will lose out. Desperately important that you get top quality estate agent, top quality solicitor, and you get the best possible advice. Really, really important. And if you're going on for a mortgage as well, top quality broker or top quality lender that can make those deadlines, because I tell you now, it is really, really tight right now. And you need to have an honest conversation if you're speaking to a solicitor about whether they can actually help you make that deadline. We certainly can. There are a number of ways we can help. we do auctions as well, so we can definitely get you before the deadline under offer. But obviously prices are different for things like auctions, so we can have a discussion about that if you need to. And we've been speaking to people up and down the country, and that's always fun. So, you know, just because you're not in our area doesn't mean you can't chat to us and get advice. I'm becoming a bit of an agony uncle in this way. So as far as the market's concerned, the research is suggesting that 100,000 sales could be prevented in terms of what's going to happen with the market should the duty not be extended. Now, a lot of people are thinking, well, you know, the government should get rid of the tax. And I get that. And yes, the government should get rid of the tax. But you've got to remember, realistically, the government are going to start to raise taxes. They're going to have to raise taxes in some way. It's going to mean pain for us all. But the beauty of stamp duty for governments is that it's the easiest tax in the world to collect. Yes, it's unfair. Yes, it's unreasonable. Yes, it prevents the market unlocking massively. And yes, they should extend the stamp duty deadline for sure. And I think they might now, especially with this more severe lockdown rules, but we'll see. We can never be sure about this. Never say never. Now, finally, as far as the Chancellor is concerned, he may push back that deadline, and we hope he does. But some of them are saying it's the most destructive and irrational taxes in Britain. That's in the Telegraph today, apparently. Alistair Heath is saying that. And I get that. I get where they're coming from there. But that doesn't mean that I think it's going to be abolished. I think, you know, it's too easy to collect that money. It's not going anywhere. It's going to stay with us. I'd love to see it reformed in a way that helps those at the bottom of the market, because as I've said many, many times, and people don't seem to be getting this in government, and it comes back to the fact that we can't hold on to a housing minister for any length of time. I'll tell you how many there have been in the last 10 years at the end of the show. You know, housing is a very, very complex animal. There are so many multifaceted parts of it. And to even get a grip on it, I would say it would take any housing minister a good couple of years, regardless if they have a grasp. I always remember years ago, one of my clients told me that they'd been asked by a housing minister, who will remain nameless, if they could pop along to a building site because they'd never seen a construction site before. This was the housing minister of the UK not many years ago, and he's never seen a construction site before working. I mean, it's just, you know, beggars belief. And they can't hold on to one. Why? Well, I think they want to address blame because of their own failings, frankly, in this area. Now, Renters Reform Bill coming very soon. This is something that will interest a lot of our landlords. Kelly Tolhurst, she's the junior government housing minister, said that they're going to introduce the controversial Renters Reform Bill very soon. This is the one which will include the measures to abolish Section 21. These are the no-fault eviction notices. They're also talking about having lifetime deposits where tenants can shift their deposit from one property to another seamlessly, preventing the need for them to move those deposits on. Not quite sure how that's going to work because the deposit is held against breakages and damage and rent arrears in the property. So clearly landlords would want to be sure that everything was all tickety-boo before allowing that deposit to be released. And how would you police that if it's seamless? I don't know. But that's remains to be their answer to the problem, is abolish Section 21 notice, because landlords are so awful. It's not going to do anything to help the market, and I'll tell you why. The moment you start doing things like that, landlords get nervous. If landlords get nervous, they withdraw from the property market, cash out. If they cash out, the intense pressure on the housing market, which is already there, becomes even more intense. Rents rise due to lack of supply. And it's not going to be taken up anytime soon by the private market. I know there's a private sector that's growing in the UK in terms of rentals, and that's all good, but it's not even scratching the surface. So really, they need to do things to make sure landlords are incentivized to stay in the market rather than what they're doing now, which is punishing them for making a profit on a business investment. I wonder when it goes wrong, as it has for many landlords, you know, over the last 6 months, we're finding that people are literally, some landlords were very lucky here, touch wood, that our tenants have been very good and we've got a very good record on rent collection, but a lot of tenants are in difficult circumstances. Some landlords haven't received rent for months. Some tenants are taking the absolute Michael out of people, and the landlords can't evict them. The courts are requiring a 6-month notice period now, even under Section 21. And even then, bailiffs aren't going in because of the lockdown tier. And even then, there's the court delays, which are going to be massive. So huge problems ahead for the rental market. Having said that, the vast majority of tenants and vast majority of landlords find themselves in a position where they're unaffected by this, as far as we're concerned so far. Now, that's going to change, no doubt, as things get a lot worse over the next year or so, I would guess. But let's hope the vaccine gives us that chink of light that we're hoping for, and we can all move on and start getting back to normality soon. Yeah, so the answer to the question, housing ministers. In the last 10 years, we have had 10 housing ministers. That's right. We've had a housing minister every single year for the last 10 years. That's why we can't get housing policy right, because by the time someone even gets to grips with it, the finger is pointed, it's all their fault, and they're kicked off, somebody else comes in. This is not the way you get sustainable housing policy. You need someone who's there for long enough to actually understand the market, and you don't do that in a year. So absolutely ludicrous, and the government really do deserve to be taken to pulled over the coals for that one. The other thing was the guy that lost his password. There's a guy called Stephen Thomas who's got 175 million in Bitcoin. He was paid a number of Bitcoin years and years ago when the value was much lower, and he protected it by a password, as you do with Bitcoin. And that value of that is now 175 million. He's now down to his last 2 tries at finding the password, and it's 175 million trap. Can you imagine? And he doesn't know what the password is. He said it's definitely not a logical one. It's not like a name or anything like that, because he's an IT guy, it's a sophisticated one. He's forgotten it. He's lost it. He's literally scratching his head. Can you imagine? 2 tries, and then that's it. 175 million wiped from him. Just extraordinary. And finally, the quote I promised you, Alan Turing. Love this one. So listen to this one carefully. Sometimes it is the people no one imagines anything of who do the things that no one can imagine. Love that. Such a sad story, Alan Turing, as well. If you haven't seen it, then you need to see the film. Read that quote again. Sometimes it is the people that no one imagines anything of who will do the things that no one can imagine. It's from Alan Turing, an absolute British genius. Very sad story. The film's called The Imitation Game. If you haven't seen it, great film to see over lockdown. That's it for Ken at 10 today. Hope you're all safe and well. Things here in Norbury SW16, overcast, not too cold, and quite busy on sales because we've got a number of hot instructions right now, and we're doing our best to push those away, get those under offer, and as I said, make sure that we've got it as tight as possible for our clients. But if you need advice on the housing market, we're here to help you. Do give us a shout anytime. And of course, something else we mentioned before is if you're a parent and you're struggling with schoolwork and you need something printed, give us a shout. We'll print it off for you. You can pop along to our door, pick it up. Stay safe. Look after your families and your neighbours. Look out for each other. And we'll see you again same time tomorrow for another Ken at 10.